welcome. It's so lovely to have so many people on the call. And we're going to kick off for Tech Talk for Wineries today. So welcome. It's lovely to have you on board today. I just want to welcome you to our webinar. We're coming to you today from the land of the Wongal clan, one of the 29 tribes of the Eora Nation, and also recognise the traditional owners of countries that you are working in today and any First Nations people who may be present. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Trish Barry. I'm the owner of Mastermind Consulting, and really lovely to have met some of you. I know that there's some of our clients and some lovely people that we've worked with over the years on this call today. For those of you who don't know me, this is my 17th year of running Mastermind Consulting. We very much specialize in the wine industry, helping wineries to connect with consumers through content, through digital marketing, and through strategy. My journey began back in Southcorp Wines from a winery perspective nearly 20 years ago now. And 18 years ago, I started Mastermind to be able to help many of the brands in the industry to be able to help them with their marketing. We're really privileged to have worked with many fabulous brands over the last 17 years, whether it's been through training or helping them with their e-commerce or social media. We were really lucky to come into the category. In 2005, I worked at Australia's first digital agency, so have seen a lot change in that time. Back in the day, websites were obviously very much a brochure. It was very much about a little bit of Google ads and banner ads really dominating the landscape. So really exciting to see how much things have changed, which is how I've come to know Peter. I'll let Peter introduce himself, but nearly 16 years ago, when Peter was working at Vin65 at the time, we were working on many Australian wineries migrating over to this, what was then revolutionary platform. Peter looked after a lot of our clients, and yeah, we've worked together for nearly 15 years from a design marketing perspective, and yeah, he's one of the finest in the industry. So I'll let him tell a little bit about his journey.
Thanks, Trish. My name's Peter. I'm the owner of Wineworks, and we're a small, capable team of around 7, just working outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. We specialize in website design and development for wineries. That's all we do. And had the privilege to partner and work alongside many wineries over the last 20 years, helping build their success online. I did start out at Vin65 with Andrew, doing e-commerce development there for the wine industry, and have stayed involved through the evolution of wine e-commerce online.
Awesome. So obviously there's been a lot of discussions in the last few weeks around winery e-commerce and winery website platforms. Lots of conversations given the Commerce7 acquisition of Wine Direct. And so why we're running this webinar today is that Peter and I have obviously both been around for a while in this category, and we really want to make sure that wineries are making informed choices if they're looking to re-platform. There's lots of information available. We want to make sure that you're tailoring that information to your own business and really making sure that you're making decisions that are right for your business to be able to succeed. So we're going to give you a lot of information today. Hopefully it's going to spark some food for thought. And I do think it is worth acknowledging that at every time that we look at a re-platforming for particular clients, the landscape is evolving very quickly. So we do have more experience using Commerce7, and you'll see some of those examples in the presentation today. We've also worked with other platforms, and I guess the point that we want to make is at every point of time that you're making a platform decision, it's a great opportunity to go out there and explore what's in the market and make an informed decision. So that's what we're trying to help you do today. So I'm just going to ask a bit of a question just for a moment to be able to see where everyone's at. So I'm just going to launch on, hopefully, the screen a bit of a poll for you to answer. I'm just going to be able to see where some of you are at in terms of being able to see where everyone is at in terms of making a platform decision. So is your winery planning to move platforms in the next 6 months or so? Great to see lots of answers. looking like from what people are responding here that some are thinking about it. Great to see there's not necessarily all wineries on board this call. So big shout out to all the consultants or platform vendors on this call. But you can see that there is obviously a lot of discussion in terms of platform choice. So we're just trying to help you to be able to understand what some of that looks like. Just giving it a few more minutes to see what some responses are. It's looking at the moment about 36% of you on the call are looking to re-platform in the next 6 months. So yeah, that's really exciting and hopefully lots of food for thought for you to think about. All right, sorry, it's back to a minute. I'm just going to move our poll for a minute. So you can see on this slide, since the news of the acquisition of WineDirect by Commerce7, there has been lots of interest since the end of January with wineries making decisions. Trying to
Trish,
understand.
you're not sharing your screen.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah.
Share again. How's that? Hopefully we're back.
Yeah.
Awesome. So direct-to-consumer sales for winery is really core to many wineries' revenue. The latest IWSR data that has just come out a few weeks ago showed that e-commerce sales for beverage brands have expected to be around $36 billion by 2028, which is growing at about 20%. Much of this growth is expected to come from some of the digital platforms. Now, that number is total beverage. It's not necessarily wine, but it can show you the opportunity here and why so many brands have moved to this being a really big part of their marketing strategy. What we've seen over the years is that D2C has often been a playground for some of the smaller brands as a way to connect with their consumers. But particularly after COVID, that landscape has changed with brands of all sizes really jumping on board and thinking about how they can tell their messages and sell direct to consumers. The landscape has evolved rapidly since the days when Peter and I obviously first jumped into this arena. So back in 2007, 2008, there was many opportunities for wineries to start thinking about how to have an e-commerce presence. And back in the day, a platform called Vin65 was a really good option for wineries to consider. It gave wineries an e-commerce platform. It was quite cost effective. You could back in the day have a mobile responsive site and you could have a great site for your desktop, and then that became responsive. And Vin65 obviously was then purchased and became WineDirect. But the platform obviously for a very long time was built on older technology. What we've seen though is that the landscape has evolved and becoming very different. And so we're giving a lot more choices to the wineries to start to think about how do you fuel your e-commerce. So we're seeing obviously brands like Commerce7 have come into the market, as well as local providers like Being Creative with Wine, Crew, Launch.io. You've got your big global powerhouses of Shopify from an e-commerce platform, and then other ways that you can configure your e-commerce solutions with e-commerce options like WooCommerce and BigCommerce. So really exciting to see the evolution, and it's been great over the last week to be able to talk to many of these vendors to just see how much their functionality has evolved and how much their platforms have come forward in the last few years. In addition to the platforms, we've also seen some of the plugins continue to grow. So let's have a look at the Shopify opportunity. So on the Shopify App Store, which many of you are familiar with, if you search the Shopify store for the word wine, you'll see that there's 97 different apps that are available to be able to help power up your winery using the Shopify App Store. And that includes platform plugins like WineHub, like Automic, and like Bloom. So if you're overseas, there's obviously different platform options that are available. Here in Australia, you hear a lot about WineHub. But these plugins are obviously connecting to the Shopify App Store with hundreds of thousands of other options also available, which may or may not be relevant for your winery. Similarly, if you have a platform like Commerce7, you'll also see that there's been a number of apps developed specifically for the winery e-commerce platform to help you drive different functionality. So if you go onto the Commerce7 website and you have a look under the partners and the App Store, you'll see that there's 3 tabs worth of different apps that you can plug in. Things like MailChimp, things like Xero. Digimatic has a really good app integration that helps to power a connection between the platform and your email marketing. So lots of different options for you to be able to explore and think about how you configure. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what is a tech stack, because often we in marketing or in the tech environment talk about this tech stack for your business. And what does that actually mean? So quite simply, in technology, a tech stack is a way, a metaphor of visualizing how all of these software systems work together to get the job done. So some of it might be core to a platform and native out of the box. Sometimes you need to be able to plug things into that platform to make it work for your business. And that could be reporting, it could be a point of sale system, it could be SMS marketing, it could be accounting to be able to make Xero, it could be a winery tax platform where you can calculate your wet tax. Thinking about how all of these tools work together gives you a technology solution for your brand. But often what we see is that wineries just talk about the platforms, and what we're recommending is that you think about your strategy first and your systems second, because really it is that strategic approach for your individual decision making that will drive the right software solution for your brand. So there's some considerations you need to think about, things like the size and scale of your business, whether you have a tasting room or you have a restaurant that needs to be integrated, whether you have a cellar door or whether you're a 100% virtual brand where you don't have a cellar door, but you're making wine and selling it to your customer. There's a whole heap of different things that you need to think about. And what we're urging you to think about is think about the requirements that are really relevant to your business. Think about the consumers that are relevant to your business. And once you've got that strategic goals set in place, then start to think about what software you need. But from a marketing point of view, we encourage you to think about the customer experience. So that customer experience must very much be at the heart of your planning. And what we've seen over the years is sometimes wineries have been thinking about a whole business approach to how they're going to solve technology. So they're looking at things that can run their winery, that can use their inventory, that can use a whole heap of different technology solutions. And there are options available out there in the marketplace where you can have that combination of different technology solutions. But from the perspective of direct to consumer, we're calling it direct to consumer because your consumer, the customer buying directly from you, really needs to be at the heart of your planning. So keep this at the forefront of what you're thinking about when you're going to think about a software solution, because it will help to guide the decision making. Now, this is a bit of a visual representation, so I'm not suggesting that we've got this 100% perfect, but what I want you to think about is that how you piece together the pieces of the puzzle to come up with your tech stack could look very different depending on the needs of your business. So let's have a look at 2 examples. On the left, you've got a diagram with Commerce7 where you can see the included parts of what comes out of the box. So going onto the Commerce7 platform, you can use their native reservation system, you can use their wine club and loyalty, you can use their point of sale, and they have e-commerce. On top of that, you need to think about a website platform like a content management system like WordPress or Squarespace. And Peter's going to touch on that and his experience shortly. Equally, out of the box, there is an email platform in many of these vendors. So simple emails can often be sent out of the systems, but for more advanced SMS or email marketing, that's where you can often plug in further for something like a MailChimp or for a Klaviyo to be able to do more sophisticated email marketing. So that gives you an idea of what comes out of the box with Commerce 7. Similarly, if we look at Shopify, you'll see some of the things that come out of the box. So you get your point of sale, you get your content management system on Shopify, you get a great e-commerce platform. And again, there's other things that you can plug in. So Wine Club and Loyalty is often a plug-in through things like Automic or with WineHub. Reservations obviously can plug in with things like Tock or things like Now Book It. It's how you then configure that tech stack to be able to come up with solutions for your business. Similarly, just representative Vin Creative and with Wine, you'll see many of the features will come out of the box, if that makes sense, when you sign up. So you'll get your Wine Club and Loyalty, you'll get point of sale, you'll get a content management system, and then you need to add in apps or plugins to make that functionality work. What we recommend there is that you go and do your own research on what the costs are and what that tech stack looks like, because each of your businesses may have very different requirements. So really understanding what you're going to need and tying that back to strategy will help you make the right modeling from a cost perspective, and also to make sure that you've got the right decisions that are being made. So let's have a bit of a chat about what some of the wineries care about. And what we've tried to do is to give you a number of factors that should guide your decision making when you're thinking about a platform. We're going to touch on all of these components. Some of them will be more important than others, depending on your business needs. But these are the elements that you need to be thinking about. Things like your customer relationship management system, the e-commerce capabilities of a platform, what your wine club or loyalty requirements. You could break those out. Some people have club, some people have loyalty, other brands have a combination. If you do have a cellar door, thinking about what the reservations looks like. Is there an opportunity to be able to get people to book in advance? What does the point of sale look like if you're in a tasting room, and how does that work? And then considerations around design, site security, team cultural fit, the service and support, the reporting functionality and future growth platforms. And then, yes, we are going to touch on price, because often that's the question we're asked most about. But let's start with the CRM system. So as marketers, we really want to be able to think about the ease of use to be able to see that single view of a customer. One of the big trends that we see from a marketing strategy point of view is about that omni-channel customer environment. So thinking about how they might find you in one part of the marketing arena, and that could be in your cellar door, and then follow that journey through a lifetime value that sees that customer experience be able to capture it. So you need to be able to have a look at the platforms and see how easy it is to be able to look at the touch points with your brand. How is it when you might be able to walk into a tasting room that you can see that single view of the customer and then service them through a really personal approach? So that becomes a big consideration. Now, for many wineries, we know that that customer experience often begins in the tasting room or the cellar door. And so then you need to start thinking about what that technology looks like. If they're discovering you first on the website to be able to make a booking, do you need to make a really easy solution to be able to book online? So is that bookings reservation native to a platform? Or do you need a plugin like a Redzi, a Tock, or a Now Book It? So that's at the top of the funnel when they're discovering you and they're working out, what winery am I going to visit in the region, and how do I make a booking for a tasting? And then we need to think about the customer journey once they move into the cellar door. And I think the US does this really well from the experiences that we've seen. And fair to say that post-COVID, we do a much better job of that. So imagine the customer walking into the tasting room. If you know the information about that customer well in advance, Are they the first time booking? Are they a VIP? Are they a wine club member? How do you then use that information to give better service in the tasting room? And then equally, once they're in your venue, what does that look like when they're placing an order? How do you create a record for future marketing campaigns to sign them up and email a receipt or integrate that experience to make it a really seamless customer journey? Because capturing those details in the cellar door becomes a really valuable asset for your business. And we've seen some of the research showing that for every dollar that they spend in your tasting room, if you're capturing those details and engaging with those consumers, they will continue to spend 78 cents in the dollar for online purchases. So getting those data and getting that member details becomes really important to consider. So thinking about what that tech stack looks like in the cellar door, exploring some of the point of sale options, thinking about how easy it is for different staff members to be able to do things like reservations, order confirmations, looking at even little things like has the customer got their information with their credit card details on file while they're in the tasting room can make a really big difference in revenue. And then it's worth looking at the e-commerce experience of the platforms. And there are some little nuances around how this looks from a design point of view. So you need to have a look and explore what that cart and that e-commerce environment looks like. Some questions that you might be able to ask are things like, is that checkout experience really streamlined? How easy is it to be able to put a product in a cart and then get a transaction? How personalized is that data? So is there member pricing? So you can see here some options on the screen where if a member is logged on, they can see their benefit of personalized pricing. You can see the difference in pricing down the bottom with some of the other examples where you can very clearly see the benefit of being a wine club member versus someone who is a first-time user. So think about that e-commerce environment. Think about things like what payment options are being given. Is there things like Apple Pay? What does that environment look like in terms of giving good security to that e-commerce experience? Are you given an opportunity to upsell into other products, which we as marketers often call dangling a carrot? So if you like this product, how do I suggestively sell another product that also might be relevant? How are you getting a higher basket? So if someone has got 9 products in the store, how do you upsell them to an extra 3 purchased bottles to give them free delivery? So things like that are a great way of incentivizing the customer through that e-commerce environment. And then for some countries, and I know this is relevant for some other than others, I'm thinking about that compliance piece because that is also a deal breaker for many. Now, wine clubs and loyalty could often be split apart, but this is where we see so much opportunity for revenue growth for the brands that we're working with. So we've seen that wine clubs and loyalty programs have come a really long way over the last decade. In the very early days, it was very much like a cellar masters model where it was mixed dozens and they chose what the options were. And for many wineries, it was often a way of clearing back vintage stock or getting rid of products that they no longer wanted. The landscape has evolved really rapidly, though, and this is a great opportunity to really think through what your proposition is in terms of your wine club or your loyalty offer. So, are you offering a subscription club where you choose what the customer is going to receive? How much flexibility are you going to offer? Are you going to let the consumer choose their own dozens? We've seen a massive uptake in those kind of choose your own dozen kind of structures. Within those choose your own, when do the customers get it? Is it quarterly? Does the consumer get to choose? How flexible is that option? So the wine club is a really big part of many wineries' revenue, and it's absolutely not dead. We've also seen a real evolution in that loyalty program for many brands. Some of them have got a combination of club and loyalty. Others are using loyalty a little bit differently, but don't assume that all of the customers that walk into your tasting room or interact with your venue all want the same thing. So really understanding the personas of who you're targeting and how you're delivering to the needs of that audience becomes a really big part of your strategy. And remember, from an accounting point of view, sometimes the loyalty programs may sit as a liability on your balance sheet. So really consider how you're constructing these clubs and loyalty programs to make sure that it's right for your business. We're often asked what consumers are looking for in a club. And I think some of this research that's come out of the D2C forum in Monterey a few weeks ago is a really good reminder of the sorts of things that consumers are looking for. So some things to touch on: your ability to choose products, your ease of canceling or pausing a subscription, great reviews, exclusive products, a really strong brand ethos and service, the packaging and presentation. There's lots of things to consider. And it doesn't always have to be about price. We've seen really strong wine clubs that have given a really good proposition to the customers and care a lot about that service experience. So really think about what that looks like for your members and how you can really continue to make a difference. Equally, go and have a look at the market, because the competition in wine clubs and loyalty programs is not just from your fellow wineries. We've seen Vino Mofo this week launch a new loyalty program onto their platform. Dan Murphy's also has a really strong platform. You'll see in Australia, the team at Good Pair Days also have a really strong loyalty program. And outside of the category, brands like Four Pillars are also playing really hard to really attract and retain their customers around their brand. So look at the competition and make sure that you're pulling together a program for your brand that is compelling and really adds value. Now I'm going to throw to Peter. He's going to just talk you through some considerations around design.
Thanks, Trish. Regardless of what CMS you're on, whether it's Squarespace or Shopify or WordPress, I just wanted to give you 3 quick tips that you should be considering. The first one, if you want to skip ahead there, Trish. The first one is to order your main menu according to your conversion priorities, right? So everybody's got different goals for their online presence. Some people are really focused on wine sales. So if that's the case, you should have wines or acquire right at the beginning of your menu. If you are looking at booking a visitation or signing up visitors to come and visit, or book tastings, then that should be right at the beginning of your main nav. But regardless, what you want to do is structure your nav to match your conversion goals. So the second thing I would urge you to do is put really strong calls to action on the homepage. A lot of wineries we see have focused on trying to tell a brand message on the homepage, which is fine in some cases, but really people are coming back to the website over and over again to do something specific, like book a reservation or buy wine. Make sure those things are right at the top and really clear. You can't overdo it. If people want to book a reservation, have that up front. Seriously consider having wine sales directly on your homepage. And I think the last thing that I would like to highlight is that accessibility should be on everyone's radar. This is especially true in the US, where there are legal implications, but we should all be deliberate about making our websites accessible to all types of customers, including those that are using adaptive technologies. So I'm going to focus today on a couple CMS systems, specifically Shopify and Commerce 7. I think there might be a little bit of comparison there, so I just wanted to give you my perspective. So Shopify has basically 2 options, right? They have a templating system, and on that templating system, you can pick a free template or a premium template, which is something you pay for. And you can get that up and running easily without a design consultant like me, right? Or you can pay a designer to build you a custom template on their templating system. So there are options there to have a site from very inexpensive to maybe moderately expensive. And just to talk about Shopify, talk about Shopify a little bit more. They have 13 free templates and 225 templates you can purchase. And you'll find a couple premium themes there that are specifically designed for wine. Something to note here is that you don't own your site, right? Like this is tied to the Shopify platform, and you can't move it or host it somewhere else. On the other end of the spectrum of the Shopify price range is headless Shopify. So you could pay somebody to build a CMS from the ground up or your website from the ground up. And obviously there's going to be some significant costs associated there, but you will own the site. Shopify's built-in templating system and CMS are somewhat limited compared to the other CMS options out there. Can you get the job done with Shopify? Absolutely. You can have a gorgeous site on Shopify, but it doesn't really compare to the flexibility that WordPress offers, for instance. You aren't moving to Shopify because of the strength of the CMS. You're doing it for the strength of the e-commerce. So on Commerce 7, you have some additional options. Believe it or not, Commerce 7 does offer a free site as a part of your fees, although it is very limited. You can get something on, if you're looking for a non-designer approach and you want to do it yourself, Squarespace offers templates, and you can have Commerce 7 site on Squarespace. In addition, you can also get templates from WordPress, or you can have a customized WordPress site as well. For full control, you don't need to go to that headless system like you do on Shopify. But if you really do have unlimited budget, or it's not a limiting consideration, you can go to headless Commerce 7 as well. As of February 2025, WordPress powered 43% of the websites on the internet. And of the ones using a CMS, it's 62%. Just like Shopify is known for its e-commerce capabilities, WordPress is known for being the king of the CMS. So if you're planning on focusing on content in the long term, I think WordPress is a pretty natural choice. I don't think it's a stretch to say that there is also a good chance that it'll be easier to find consultants or staff to help you with your WordPress site. So I just wanted to provide a couple quick examples of WordPress designs. Opus One has been on WordPress and Commerce 7 since the inception of the Commerce 7 platform. It's a great example of a full custom design WordPress site without having to invest in a headless approach. The next example is Hesperson, another good example of a complex multi-tier offering, leveraging the power and tools available without having to build everything from scratch, leveraging really powerful features within WordPress. If you're looking for WordPress templates, Commerce 7 has a variety of pre-built WordPress templates by different vendors and support teams on the Commerce 7 platform. And these are all made for the wine industry. And also Squarespace, of course, has hundreds of templates that you can choose from as well. I just wanted to provide an example of a customized template here. This is a project we did for Best Wines with Trish's team. The benefits of the approach of using a template here and customizing it are time to launch is significantly reduced, reasonable budget, and a lot of content design flexibility right out of the box. And I think finally, I wanted to talk about a unique feature that Commerce 7 offers, which is personalization. So this helps you develop content to move customers along the engagement ladder, right? So depending on what kind of customer they are, you can message them differently. So let's take an example of Home Oak and how they've implemented this feature. So visiting their homepage as an anonymous user, we're not going to offer them necessarily a wine club focused call to action as a big part of that homepage. We're going to ask for a micro commitment and tell them the benefits. So we're going to ask them to become a subscriber. So as an anonymous user, we're not trying to jump too far ahead. Now, if I've already bought as a first-time buyer and I come back to the site, my goal is to get the purchaser to buy again. So what I can do is offer a coupon and also show them wines based on their previous purchase. So I can give them a personalized wine recommendation. This is all built into the Commerce 7 platform. So first-time customer can see an incentive to buy again. Now, if I'm already a repeat buyer, I've proven that I'm interested in the wine. So now we can then start pitching the wine club. So as a repeat buyer coming back to the homepage, I start seeing messages about joining the wine club, the benefits of it, and why I might consider that as an option. And then the last scenario, perhaps, that you could implement on the homepage is if you already are a wine club member, I can then be messaged directly about my upcoming shipment. So you're not going to ask the wine club member to dig through many clicks, log into the member area, find their club. You can message them right up front and let them know about their upcoming shipment right on the homepage if you wanted to, or on the club landing page for that matter, and give them the tools to customize their club, add products or swap them out, that kind of thing. So it's really powerful. Now, if there isn't a club shipment happening at this time, you could message them with something else, like to take advantage of their other club member benefits, like a free tasting, to keep them engaged between club shipments. The possibilities here are really powerful and give wineries the tools to help grow their customer engagement over time. Thanks, Trish.
Thanks, Peter. Lots of food for thought in terms of the design there.
Yeah, definitely.
So a couple of other considerations to think about, and this is often a big question in terms of support when something goes wrong. So the more complicated your tech stack becomes and the more elements that you've bundled together, the more skills that you're going to need to run the platform. So that's a consideration as you start to think about how do you piece this together. There's some great, obviously, local support. So you've got Vin Creative, you've got With Wine, you've got Wine Hub that are obviously Australian based. Those platforms obviously give their service and their support here locally. But equally, you've got platforms like Commerce 7 who are about to go to 24/7 support with 30 people around the globe that are their dedicated support staff. So don't just assume that because support is not necessarily onshore that you're not going to get the support that you need. You need to ask the questions about the tech coverage that you're looking for and make sure that you're really clear on who is going to support you when something goes wrong. How familiar are they with the system? You know, or inevitably things go wrong after hours. What sort of after hours support is there? You know, how stable are their platforms? There's lots of questions that you need to consider in terms of what that support looks like for your brand. And then future proofing is really critical. So we've seen some of the limitations with platforms like Wine Direct that have been built on old technology and haven't grown with the technology evolution. So you need to start thinking about things like how often is the platform redeveloping? What does their development roadmap look like? How are they integrating with tools like AI to be able to use machine learning to recommend relevant products and continue to evolve? So you need to be thinking about this in terms of the next 5 years of growth, not necessarily where the platform is at now, and start to think about what future needs you might need as your business continues to grow. Importantly, the team and the culture in your business also may help to guide some of that decision making. So you need to ask yourself who in your team is going to run these projects, who's going to be the champion of the customer, and what skills exist within your organization to learn a new system. You might need to think about training them and bringing them on board to be able to learn a new platform. Or Equally, some of the team members might have familiarity with a particular platform, which positions you as a business to be able to upskill quite quickly and drive some results. So a really big thing to think about. Now, the multi-million dollar question that I know lots of you are asking is, what about costs? And we're not about to be pitting one platform against each other here. What we're trying to get you to think about is what costs are relevant for your business, and to go and look like for like when you're making those comparisons, because your tech stack may look different to the winery down the road, and the platform costs will evolve. So we want to think about those costs in two different buckets. First of all, you need to think about some of the upfront costs to consider. So looking at things like potential consulting time and strategy, the website development and design. What are the costs of data migration? Often tokenizing credit cards and moving them from one platform to another has a cost component that's associated. So look at those different costs around hardware, integration with other systems. I know that there's a few people on this call that were specialists in Xero and some of the finance packages. How easily does that plug in, and what sort of changes might you need to make? And equally, what currency are you being billed in for some of these platforms? Because currency fluctuations also need to be a consideration that you need to look at and model. So upfront, there's a few things that you need to look at from a costing point of view, and then the ongoing costs also start to evolve. So some of the things, depending on what your tech stack looks like, that you might consider are things like the monthly platform fees. So some of them are a flat rate and a percentage of sales. In addition to that, there's payment gateway charges, and this is where some of the costs as you scale might start to stack up. So Stripe, for example, charges 1.75% and 30 cents per transaction for the types of things that run through the Stripe gateway. Shopify have their own payment gateway, and you're paying at the moment approximately 1.6% plus 30 cents per transaction for those online transactions. Or if you have the POS in your venue, it is 1.85% on that transaction fee. There's also third-party payment providers and lots of options around that. So go and explore what the payment gateway looks like and make sure that you're very clear on what those costs are. Equally, there may be some things in the tech stack that you don't need upfront. So for example, the reservation system is native in Commerce 7. However, you may need to integrate something like a TOC or a Redsea. So look at what those needs are and then what those ongoing charges might be. You then have other costs like your website maintenance and hosting that needs to be factored in. Email marketing platform costs, which we'll touch on in a moment. Some of those platforms that is included at a basic level. Sometimes if you're powering it up through MailChimp or Klaviyo, there's additional costs that are incurred. And then you need to start to have a look at the different plugins. So it could be a wine club plugin like Wine Hub, where you're getting an additional cost on some of those club revenues. So from the website, it looks like it's about $279 US and 2% of the wine club revenue. You may need other plugins to be able to power up your tech stack, and that could be things like shipping plugins. It could be a data integration. There's a whole heap of different gateways that you might need to configure that have a monthly cost that you need to start to have a look at as part of your tech stack. And then thinking about that ongoing training and maintenance. So making sure that you've got a budget that has been factored in for those ongoing costs. So what we're encouraging you to do is to go and model these numbers yourself based on your own business experience. There's some great information on the websites that you can start from a pricing point of view, but go and talk to the providers, because many of them are really open to having that conversation to help you understand the costs. So as an example, if you go to the Commerce 7 platform, you do have some of the out-of-the-box functionality depending on the size of your business. So you can see that you can get started for as little as $149 a month, and then you pay a 1.5% transaction fee. And then you'll see what is included in that are things like your POS, your clubs, your subscriptions, e-commerce, your CRM, and your reservations. And as Peter explained earlier, there's a number of options that you can look at in terms of what that website cost would look like. So it's a little bit easier to be able to see what those costs would be. Equally, if you're going to look at a Shopify solution, you can go onto their website and see what some of the costs are. So again, looking at the types of volume that you're going to put through the platform, you can start to have a look at what some of the costs would be. And then depending on whether you're using a plugin like a Wine Hub or an Automic as a different platform, you can start to see where the different costs will come in from a monthly percentage. And then the managed revenue, which is often that wine club revenue that you also need to model. So don't forget the currency conversion. Ask the questions around what that currency conversion would look like. And equally, talking to some of the Australian-based platforms like a Vin Creative or a Withwine, you'll see their costs on their website and go and model what that would look like. So you've got some great information about your base fees that would be there, but then start to ask some questions of things like, well, what are the processing fees? What percentage would that look like? How does that scale as my business starts to scale? Because once you have some of those variables, then you can start to look at what a model would look like. And my team spend a fair bit of time looking at this modeling, where we go and have a look at things like how many club members, how many subscribers, what is your annual turnover in terms of revenue from a club and a non-club perspective. So getting that information allows your business to make a really informed decision around what the costs would look like so that you can get those assumptions right and start to understand the true cost to your business. And that's something that we spend a bit of time working with wineries at the moment on looking at what those costs would consider. So spend some time looking at that, go and ask some questions yourself and make sure that you've got the assumptions correct about the tech stack that is right for your business. Now, a couple of other considerations to think about is onboarding to a new platform. So we saw that there was a good percentage of people on this call who are looking for a new platform. Some of the things you need to think about before you leave and before you make a commitment are things like, well, what does moving to a new platform look like? How involved does the consumer need to be? How long would a project look like? How am I going to free up resources within my team to be able to manage this project with things like cleaning data as part of that transition? So at this time of year, when you often have a small team and you're trying to manage vintage and you're trying to manage your cellar door, not everyone has the resources to be able to dedicate a project manager to run this transition. So you really need to think about that. You also need to think about what is the cost of migrating the data. So we have seen in the past that movement of credit card data securely being a key consideration when moving platforms. Also think about things like the aesthetics. As Peter said, often we've seen some really good designs that are, a templated approach, which means that you can move pretty quickly and then evolve the front end design as you grow or as you start to understand the needs of your customer better. So start to think about some of these components. Also consider some of the things like SEO impact. So making sure that you have links that are redirected properly so that you're not losing site traffic as you move over to a new site. We've often seen sites migrated from one platform to another, and then they get a massive drop in organic search because they don't have that proper SEO redirect. So make sure that if you're moving from nameofwinery.com/wine club to nameofwinery.com/wine club options as an example, that you've remapped and you've redirected those links so that you're not losing your SEO impact. And then importantly, find a partner that you can trust and work with. So get to know the people that are going to be part of your team, because it very much is a partnered approach and they're the people that you're going to need to work with. Also, look at what training is available for your team. So, we've seen so much exciting evolution in terms of what that training now looks like. So, Commerce 7 now has an academy where you can train your staff and you can go through the platform. You can start to see what the documentation looks like, and you can use that training at your own pace. We've also seen With Wine develop things like a support library of videos that are able to help you. Shopify has some great examples. WineHub has some great examples. But ask the questions about what online resources are available, because you may find a better fit in terms of how your team likes to learn using one platform over another. And then this is one for those that are, data driven and often looking at some of the financials. This is a really important part to drive your strategy. So think about the reporting functionality, what comes out of the box in terms of the functionality from reporting. And then sometimes looking at some of the plugins also gives you a really good perspective of how you're powering up decision making that is right for your business. So understand what reporting metrics matter and go through and make sure that you're going to have that decision-making tool to make better informed decision for your business. Also think about things like making sure that you've got Google Analytics on the back end of the platform, Google Tag Manager of a way of tracking some of those key events. Do you have meta pixels set up so that you can retarget and advertise brands? So there's a lot of things that you need to think about from that reporting functionality that will help to give you the data you need. So that covers off those kind of key components from wineries that are thinking about moving over to a platform. But equally, I know there's a few on the call today who have got an existing platform and they're thinking about how do they power up growth. And I think it's fair to say that email for us is a really big part of that love letter that we often describe with the consumer. So this just gives you a bit of an idea about how powerful that revenue driver is from email. So you can see here, this is a bit of a representative look at some of the website traffic from our Mastermind clients last year. And you can see that email makes a little smaller part of the website traffic, but it's where a lot of that revenue comes from. So thinking about what email looks like in your business is really important. Some of those email platforms that we've talked about, some of the website platforms have got really good email builders natively in the platforms now. Once upon a time, it used to be really clunky and you'd have a very limited design where you literally put in a logo and that's it. Whereas now you've got much more automated options. You can see here, this is some of the information in the With Wine platform. You can see here, this is, Vin Creative also gives you information about campaign management. But keep in mind, many of the platforms when you're doing costings will have some of this email functionality native. Where you see often the power up and where you see some of that more sophisticated email marketing is where you then plug in a platform like a MailChimp or a Klaviyo. So this allows a brand to be able to set up different automated rules for communications based on things like a welcome series, an abandoned cart flow, things like a win-back flow, where if you haven't purchased for a certain number of times, you can set a rule into how the logic works for that email communications. Sometimes this plugs in directly into the platforms. Sometimes you need an enabler like in Commerce 7, Digimatic is the plugin that allows that data to flow between the platforms. We found it's been an incredible system for the types of campaigns that we've been running. And we're seeing this is where we're putting a lot of our focus in revenue growth. Finally, once you have your customers, don't forget about that continuing to nurture them and keep people coming back to the site. So it's like you've got a brand new car and you've powered it up and you've purchased it. This is the fuel that you need to keep putting into that engine to keep people coming back. So it could be things like digital advertising. It could be things like merchandising the site with your latest reviews, making sure that you've got information that's really pertinent to the consumers that are visiting your site. It could be continuing to embed emails or your YouTube channel into the website so that you've got that really engaging content to help deepen the connection on the site. Peter talked about personalization, which I know is available on some of the platforms, but then thinking about your search engine optimization and how you're crafting content on the site. Some sites are very much there for e-commerce, and that's the goal. Others, we see nearly 50% of the traffic coming to the website because of storytelling, the blogs, the information about the region. So really understanding what the content strategy about your site is important. And then finally, don't forget to make sure that your brand website tells that authentic story that is capturing the heart of your consumers. Just putting a vineyard photo on the front of your website and assuming that you're getting your own story out there is not necessarily unique. So think about how you're crafting that story and making sure that you've got that reason for your consumers that are touching your brand to keep going deeper to find out those stories to tell more. So that's a lot that we've covered. I guess the question that we often hear is where to next to be able to make those decisions. So just to recap some of the things that we've spoken about today. Make sure that you are thinking about your strategy. Remember what we talked about up front. It is strategy first, systems second. Make sure that you've been very clear about what you need to power your brand into the future. And sometimes to help with that, and it helps Peter and it helps my team, coming up with a brief to be very clear on what your functionality looks like from a design perspective or from a functionality perspective so that you can model that becomes a really important consideration. Do the own modeling of the costs for your business and be really clear of what your tech stack looks like. Understand what is included in the platforms and what you're going to need differently. And it may be that you need to add on over time. And you can, if you're a really tiny winery that's starting out, get a lot of the functionality that you need out of the box with some of these solutions. So think about what your needs are, then model it, but keep in mind what the growth looks like. A big part of this project is often about data migration. So if you are thinking about replatforming, maybe a good thing to start with at the moment is cleaning up your customer data, making sure that you're getting rid of duplications, thinking about making sure you've got good notes, making sure that the information that's going to transition from one system to another is very clear. And then get the buy-in to that decisions across your business and work with the partners that you want to have that relationship with to drive the results. Peter, is there anything else that you would add here?
No, I don't think so.
All right, so we're pretty much at the end. We will send you this recording, and if I think we've got a couple of minutes that we can open up to questions, but we will send you where Mastermind and the team from Wineworks are able to help you. We've both got pretty small and wine-focused teams. I'm very open to continuing the conversation in terms of what a website project would look like or how we might be able to assist you in that journey. Hopefully we've powered you with some food for thought today. This is obviously a very fast-moving environment. There's lots of things for you to think about. We are here, both of our contact details are obviously up on the screen, and we'll send that out with the recording. Just to reiterate, I think this is a really exciting time for you as a winery or us as consultants to be able to help enable a growth platform for the future and to really think about what that direct to consumer offering is and then power it with the right technology choice. So think about your brand. What does that look like moving forward? Because there's never been a more exciting time to be able to work in this space that is dedicated for making money direct to consumer with wineries. So also want to just thank Peter for sharing his expertise. I know that it's obviously a very different time zone, so it's been great that you've been able to join us and share your decades of expertise from a design perspective.
Thanks, Trish. Really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who joined the webinar. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone. We will send out the recording very shortly, and then also open to be able to answer any questions offline should you need it. Thanks for joining us. Hope it's a successful vintage for those of you who are heading back out to the vineyards, and we will talk to you soon.